You didn't stumble into that relationship by accident. You didn't enter their life by mistake. And it wasn't some random twist of fate. This might sound strange, maybe even hard to accept, but stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a mirror, a hidden truth buried beneath the emotional storm you once endured, a deeper reason behind the pain, the manipulation, and the emptiness you once called love. I'm not here to talk about them, the ones who hurt you. I'm here to talk about you, about why you were placed in that very relationship, about the message the universe, life, or perhaps your very own soul has been trying to send you. And when you truly hear it, really hear it, you'll never look at your past the same way again. You'll see clearly you were never broken. You were being awakened. If you have ever asked, why me? This video is for you. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more powerful and healing messages like this, and watch until the end, because I believe that by the time this screen fades to black, you won't be the same. You'll be someone beginning a new journey, a journey back to your true self. One, when you forget who you are, they step in. You might think you accidentally fell into that relationship, a mistake, an emotional slip. But the truth is, nothing happens by chance. Everything that unfolds in your life has a purpose. And sometimes the fiercest storms are the only force strong enough to awaken the real you. No, you didn't meet them by coincidence. And the ones who manipulate with false charm, didn't accidentally enter your life either. They arrived at the exact moment you were most vulnerable, not because you were weak, but because you had momentarily forgotten how brightly your inner light once shone. Let me tell you something. Narcissists don't seek out the indifferent or the emotionally numb. They're not drawn to people who have nothing to give. They're magnetized by souls who love deeply, give unconditionally, and are willing to sacrifice for others, but who haven't yet learned where to draw the line. They came to you because you had something they lack, a genuine heart, a spirit that longs to heal, and a deep yearning to be loved the right way. And ironically, that is exactly what made you the perfect supply for them. It's not that you were inadequate. It's that you had grown used to staying silent to keep the peace. That you had learned to accept incomplete relationships as long as you had the strength to endure them. That you believed if you loved enough, were patient enough, kind enough, then maybe, just maybe, they would change. But what you didn't see was that every time you shrank yourself to fit into their world, you slowly lost yourself. And then they stepped in. Quietly, without warning, but with precision, they praised you, lifted you up, looked at you as if you were the only one. But it was also that one day, they could withdraw that light and leave you in the darkness of doubt, guilt, and self-blame. They didn't hurt you right away. They planted seeds. They praised you so you'd crave their validation. They listened so you'd believe someone finally understood you. And then, little by little, they began to control your emotions through silence, through cold stares, through sugar-coated mockery disguised as affection, because you didn't see it right away, because you were used to ignoring your intuition. You had become too skilled at making excuses for others. He's probably just tired. She's just been hurt. Maybe it's my fault. But deep down, something felt off. And you knew it. You just didn't trust yourself enough to act. Not because you were weak, but because you were taught that preserving the relationship was more important than preserving yourself. And that's exactly when you need to hear this. You were not created to live forever as someone who's just enough for others. You weren't born to be a backdrop for those who never value your light. You are not someone who needs to be redeemed by another's love. You are the one who needs to remember who you are, someone who is already enough, even when no one sees it. If you're still listening, then let me say this. You're beginning to awaken. And that's why that relationship doesn't feel okay anymore. That's why you feel restless, exhausted, maybe even angry at yourself. Don't push those feelings away. They're signals that you're waking up from a long sleep, that you're arriving at the edge, the border between endurance and so forth. And crossing that border, that's the first step back to your true self. You may not see that version of yourself clearly yet, but trust me, that person never disappeared. Like, they've just been waiting for you to hurt enough to stop, to tire enough to let go, to awaken enough to begin again. And this video, this is the reminder you've been searching for. If this message is stirring something deep inside you, hit that subscribe button now, because we're about to go deeper, step by step, decoding, healing, and rebirthing. And stay until the end of this video, because I promise you, what you're about to hear is not just words. It's light, the light you once lost but will never lose again. It's not that you're weak, it's that you were taught the wrong way to love. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever looked back at a moment in that relationship and asked, "Oh, why did I put up with that? Or why didn't I leave sooner?" If you've ever asked yourself those questions, please stop right there. Because the answer isn't weakness. It lies in the emotional conditioning you've carried since early in your life. You were taught that being kind means sacrificing, that loving someone means accepting the pain they bring, that patience is a virtue, that an incomplete, one-sided relationship can still be called love, as long as you try hard enough. But what no one told you is this: real love does not require you to suffer just to survive. Doesn't ask you to shrink your dreams, dim your intuition, or lock your heart in a box labeled acceptance. You may not have realized it, but you've been trading pieces of yourself, little by little. You called it maturity, compassion, learning how to love the right way. But deep inside, you were folding yourself up to fit into a relationship that had no room for your true self. You tried to please. You bent your boundaries. You told yourself they're just going through something. You explained away their coldness as unhealed trauma. You mistook their control for a different kind of love. But slowly those justifications became a habit, and that habit became your reality. A reality where you couldn't longer recognize yourself. It's not because you're weak. It's because you were taught to love through broken examples. Maybe in your childhood, love always came with conditions. Maybe you grew up in an environment where staying silent and pleasing others was the only way to be acknowledged. And that programming etched itself deep into your nervous system like an emotional language. That to be loved, you must sacrifice. That to have value, you must always do more. That to keep someone, you must endlessly forgive. So when the narcissist entered your life, they didn't have to teach you how to endure. They simply activated what you were already familiar with. They mirrored back the emotional pattern you once thought was normal. They didn't create the wound. They just stepped into the very place you'd never healed. And that's why you stayed. Not because you didn't see what was happening, but because the hurt part of you was still seeking validation. You weren't just loving them. You were trying to fix something older, deeper, the belief that you had to earn love to be worthy of it. But the day will come when the pain becomes too loud to ignore. When you finally realize love isn't supposed to suffocate you. It's not a place where you have to lose yourself just to be kept. It's not an emotional game where you spend each day wondering if you're good enough to be loved. You'll realize you weren't born to be someone's backdrop. You're not someone who's just good at enduring. You are someone who deserves to be cherished. And when you truly understand that, everything begins to shift. Not because they changed, but because you no longer agree with the old version of yourself. You know, this journey isn't easy. Not everyone has the courage to look back and face the reasons why they once accepted less than they deserved. But you, the one watching this video, you're beginning to walk a different path. And that is something no one, no past can ever take away from you. This video is stirring something deep within you. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because this isn't just a video, this was a space for you to remember the truth about who you are. And if you stay until the end, I believe you won't just gain awareness, you'll gain courage to say enough, courage to choose yourself, and courage to never forget. You once forgot who you were, but now you are coming home. Part 3. Chaos doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. There are truths you'll never clearly see as long as everything feels fine. The truth is, if that relationship had only hurt just enough, if the other person had only been moderately toxic, you might have stayed. Not because you didn't see the problem, but because you had grown too used to accepting less than you deserve. But the blessing, and yes, it is a blessing, even if you haven't called it that yet, was that the chaos reached a level you could no longer deny. It left you no way back. Of course, when the emotional storm hit, when the gaslighting made you question your own reality, when the cold silences became weapons that killed your trust, eventually the truth stood bare. This isn't bluff, and you could no longer pretend not to know. The narcissist didn't just hurt you. They forced you to confront the cracks you had tried to hide. They stood up every defense you had built to avoid your loneliness, your feelings of inadequacy, your fear of abandonment. In their manipulation, you saw just how many parts of yourself you had traded away to hold on to someone who never truly valued you. And here's the cruel but necessary truth. The chaos wasn't sent to destroy you. It came to strip away the mask you'd been wearing for far too long. You had tried so hard to appear normal. You had crafted a version of yourself, sweet enough, gentle enough, agreeable enough to be accepted. But the chaos they brought tore that version apart. There was no more room for pretending, no more energy left to keep enduring. And in that moment, you were left with two choices: to collapse further into the role you had been playing, or to rise, exposed, vulnerable, but finally real The truth is, you don't have to be strong all the time, but you do have to be honest with yourself. And sometimes being honest means admitting that you once sold your peace just for the illusion of being loved, that you stayed silent for far too long simply because you were afraid of losing someone who was never truly present for you. And then something miraculous happens. When you stop forcing yourself to endure, you begin to hear your own inner voice again, a voice you once silenced. I deserve more than this. At first it whispers, barely audible, but then it grows louder and stronger until it becomes a choice. I will not go back. It is within the chaos that you finally find yourself. It's not the perfect self, not the untouched, never hurt self, but the real self, the one who dares to stand alone, dares to say no, dares to stop apologizing for living in alignment with their values. You begin setting boundaries. You no longer apologize for not replying right away. You no longer feel guilty for not shrinking yourself. You stop explaining yourself to people who never care to understand you, and that is freedom. Not the flashy kind of freedom you see on social media, but a deep, quiet freedom that begins within. It's the kind that doesn't come from changing someone else, but from no longer needing them to change. I know this path isn't easy. There are no nights you feel you empty. Moments when you doubt the very choice to walk away. But if you're here reading these words, then I believe you've already come too far to go back. And that's a victory. A victory not because you conquered them, but because you chose yourself. If you see yourself in these words, if you're on a journey to reclaim who you are after the chaos, then hit that subscribe button right now. This video isn't just a story, it's companionship. And if you stay until the end, so maybe you'll find yourself in a place you once never dared to reach, in a version of you that no longer needs love to prove their worth, because they now know their worth never came from anyone else. That chaos, the thing you once thought was your ending, was actually your awakening. And from the moment you heard it, the journey home began. Part 4, pain doesn't come to end you. It comes to bring you home. You're often taught that pain is the enemy, that if you're hurting, something must be wrong, that tears are a sign of weakness. But what no one teaches you is that pain has its own kind of wisdom, a wisdom the mind can't grasp, but the heart, if still enough, can hear. Pain doesn't knock on your door by accident. It arrives when you've spent too long pretending everything's fine. It comes when you've endured far more than your heart was ever meant to bear. When you keep calm or abuse love, when you mistake harsh criticism for care, but you let hollow embraces replace real connection. And one day, pain stops arriving as a quiet ache. It crashes in like a flood, overwhelming, consuming, so powerful you can't keep pretending anymore. And that is the sacred moment. It's a moment you realize you no longer want to live that way. You might think this is the breaking point, the end, but in truth, it's an invitation to step out of the old role you've been playing, to return inward to the voice that's been drowned out for too long by your need to be liked, accepted, or enough for someone else, to return to your true self. It's the place no one can manipulate, demand, or shrink anymore. Let's be honest. You once believed that if you were kind enough, patient enough, selfless enough, they would change. You thought that if you kept fixing yourself, you'd finally be loved. But what you didn't see is that you were placing your love in the hands of someone who never intended to protect it. And worth, you believed that was normal. Not because you were foolish, but because you were once conditioned to believe that love must come with pain, that you had to sacrifice yourself to maintain connection, that if someone left you, it must have been your fault. But the truth is different. The truth is, real love doesn't require you to disappear. They don't demand that you trade your peace for the feeling of being needed. You used to call their silence a moment of pause. You used to call their control care. You used to call your anxiety passion. But eventually, you realized that wasn't love. That was a power game, and you were never meant to be a piece on that board. When you awaken, everything begins to shift. You no longer feel the need to justify your emotions. You stop trying to understand toxic behavior. You stop thinking you have to fix yourself in order to be loved. Instead, you begin rebuilding yourself from the broken pieces with the kind of love that's real, unconditional love for yourself. And you learn to say no without guilt. You learn to be silent, not out of fear, but by choice. You learn not to react to every provocation. It was because now you understand. I said, what doesn't deserve you doesn't deserve your energy. And slowly you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you once gave away just to feel accepted. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It comes through tears, through lonely days, through every small decision you make for yourself. But every time you choose you heal. I know there were times you thought you weren't strong enough to survive this. Now look at you. You're still here, still listening, still searching for truth. And that means you've already stepped onto a path no one else can walk for you. The path home. And if you are somewhere in the middle of that journey, let me walk with you. Click that subscribe button right now, because this video isn't an ending. It's a beginning. It's a reminder that you are not alone. And if you stay until the end, I believe you'll find what you've always been searching for. Not someone else's love, but the way back to yourself. Pain didn't come to break you, and Kino awake you, to show you the places where you've been too far, where you stayed silent too long, where you loved so deeply you forgot to love yourself. And when you face that pain head on, without avoiding it, without running, you'll see beneath it all is light, is the power to be reborn, is the strength you never dared to name. You are no longer the one who endured. You are the one who overcame. And from here on, everything changes. Part 5, you don't need to be saved anymore. You are the one rewriting the legacy. Maybe you once waiting for someone to come and pull you out of the darkness. A heartfelt apology, a real change. A late but sincere regret strong enough to make up for all you had endured. You thought that if they came back, if they finally woke up, then maybe it would all be worth it. But then you realized no one is coming. And it was in that very absence that you finally began to see the light. Not a light from the outside, but a light from within, is the kind that had always been there, only buried under expectations, habitual endurance, and the fear of abandonment. And you began to understand you no longer need to be saved. You are the one you've been waiting for. This is no longer the journey of a victim. This is the journey of the cycle breaker, the one who stands in the middle of the deepest wound and chooses not to pass it on, the one who says enough, not just for themselves, but for the children who will grow up with a healthier definition of love. You once thought that walking away was a failure, but in truth, it was a revolution, because you were programmed to stay, to forgive, to endure. You were taught that love meant suffering, that if you left, you weren't forgiving enough. But now you see clearly, staying in what shrinks you, that is the greatest betrayal of your soul. You no longer confuse intensity with sincerity. You are no longer drawn to those who make you feel like you have to earn your worth. You are no longer seduced by relationships that demand you sacrifice your peace just to have someone beside you. You now understand peace is not boring. Peace is the right to breathe without fear. And you realize something else just as important. When you begin to choose yourself in life, some people no longer be able to walk beside you, no matter how good you were not. But because they only knew how to connect with the version of you they could control, the one who always agreed, always worried, always tried to hold everything together, even as you were falling apart. When you say no to what once hurt you, you don't just change your life. You rewrite the story of your family, of your bloodline, with every generation after you, because you are the first to dare to face what others ignored, to ask the hard questions, to break the silence, and to say, I deserve more than this. And yes, it will be lonely at times. There will be days no one understands you. Nights when you wonder if you were wrong to leave, wrong to set boundaries, wrong to say no. However, remember this, the loneliness of healing is far gentler than the loneliness of lying next to someone who makes you feel empty. And if you're still on this journey, rebuilding yourself from what once crumbled, let me remind you this, you don't need to be perfect to be worthy of healthy love. You only need to be brave enough not to go back to what broke you. I know to get here, you've had to give up a lot. Maybe you lost a relationship, a family, a group of friends, or even an identity that once made you feel safe. But what you're rebuilding now, brick by brick, is something no one will ever be able to take from you again. Your self-respect, your clarity, and your inner strength. You are the first in your family to say, love is not silence, love is not control. Love is not self-erasure in the name of endurance. You are the first to choose the discomfort of truth over the illusion of safety. And that day one is the bravest thing a person can ever do. If what I shared today speaks to you, click that subscribe button. It's because you are not alone on this journey. We are a community of those who are awakening, healing, and rebuilding from the inside out. And if you stay until the end of this video, I promise you this, you will walk away with a new light, will not a light given to you by anyone else, but one you've rediscovered within yourself. You don't need to be rescued anymore because you've learned how to rise. And more importantly, you've chosen to never again kneel before anything that made you forget your worth. If you're still here, still listening, then one thing is certain. You've already begun the journey back to yourself. Not the version someone was manipulated. Not the image the world once expected. Your true self. The one who knows they are worthy, who knows their value, and who knows that love is never something to beg for or suffer to receive. You've walked through chapters full of tears, doubt, and pain. But you are no longer the same, because the pain, instead of drowning you, became your teacher. The chaos, instead of making you lose your way, became your launching pad. And you, instead of collapsing, chose to rise, step by step, on your own 2 feet. No one else may ever fully understand what you've been through, but you no longer need them to, because now you don't live to be accepted. You live to be real, and in that truth, you found a strength you may not have even known you carried your whole life. And this is the most important thing I want you to take with you. If you are not alone, there are so many others out there. And also learning how to let go of pretending. Also learning how to love themselves without guilt. Also walking through their own darkness to find the light within. And because of that, we have each other. A community of souls who were once broken, but never destroyed. If this video touched you, if it awakened something within you, hit the subscribe button right now, not just so you won't miss the next healing message, but so you always be reminded, you deserve a life that is free, whole, and overflowing. And leave a comment, share your thoughts or your story, because maybe, just maybe, your words will be the light for someone else who's lost in the same way you once were. This journey doesn't end here. This is only the beginning, a new chapter, where you no longer live in fear, no longer love with conditions, and no longer apologize for being exactly who you are. You didn't just survive, you returned, and this time you've come back with all of your power